Thank you very much. Today we're going to color the lines between life and death. When is dead really dead? What a morbid question. I must say, 30 years ago when I was in high school, 40 years ago when I was in high school, I never thought I would be asking these type of questions. And I'd like to take you on my journey of why we asked a question like that and how we answered it, to inspire you to be curious, to ask hard questions and find the answers. I work in an intensive care unit at the Children's Hospital. We see the sickest children that often need life-sustaining therapies. Now I'm thankful because 98% of our children that come through the unit get better and go home. But I'd like to tell you about a story that was a bit different. This was about 20 years ago when I started my career here. A young child came in after being in a car accident, had catastrophic brain injury, heart, lung, lots of damage. We did everything we could, surgeries, all the medical specialties we could offer, and medical therapies, but it was clear there was no hope for recovery. That was a sad day. Talking to a family about this is very emotional. It was hard. That family came back to us and said, can their child be an organ donor? We didn't have the processes, I didn't have the expertise, we didn't have the facilities at that time to say yes. I said no to this family. But right then, I started my journey of discovery to say, listen, I can do better. That I want to be able to say yes to a family. We can't save every child. So I started to explore organ donation. Let me tell you what I found out. There's living donors, people who can give maybe a kidney or half a liver, but they have to stay living without 2 kidneys. That's really not effective. Most donation occurs after someone dies, what we call deceased donation. And that sort of donor can offer up to 8 organs. The heart, 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, the liver can be split. The gift of transplant is immense. I'm going to give you some choices. How many donors do you think there are in Canada? There are 38 million people. I'll give you 3 choices, you can put up your hand. 700, 7,000, or 70,000 donors a year. So who says 700 deceased donors a year? Hands up, a few. 7,000. More, 70,000. Yeah, a few. In fact, only 700-ish deceased donors a year. Out of 38 million people, over 300,000 deaths. It's really rare. Sometimes because they're not medically suitable. Sometimes because people don't consent to donation. Sometimes it's mistrust. Transplant saves lives. This is my friend's daughter who got a liver transplant early in life, and now she's in high school, playing the violin and doing the things that we do here. It's amazing. Over 2,000 transplants last year in Canada, but there's still 4,500 people on the waiting list today. 4,500. 1 person on that list dies every 3 days. That's heartbreaking. I'm thankful it wasn't this young girl, that there's somebody else, a daughter, a sibling, a parent who needs a transplant right now. So why aren't there more donors? I mentioned some of them. The thing I feared the most was mistrust. That's okay. People don't trust the medical system. They're afraid that we're not going to treat them and go for organ donation first, but in fact, that's not true. We always treat to the end of ability before considering organ donation. Some people worry about organs being removed while they're still alive. In fact, this came up more often than I thought. I asked the question, why? In fact, I wasn't surprised. There's news articles all the time about people coming back to life. They're dying, they're declared dead. They ask questions like W5 did, Are they dead enough? It's a question you might think medical science would have answered long ago, similar to the question we're asking today. And this worry about being wrongfully declared dead before going for organ donation probably prevents people from doing that. This is not a new problem. This is a patent a couple of centuries ago where there's a bell with a little string that goes right into the coffin because people were worried about being buried alive. And I think we've heard a lot of those Halloween stories. So this is a fear that's real. For organ donation, for deceased organ donation to go forward, we have a rule. It's called the dead donor rule, where one must be dead before organs can be removed, and the act of removing an organ can't kill you. So the situation is that you have a catastrophic illness, usually related to your brain, and your other organs are working, that your life stops either from brain death or from your heart stopping. And what we realized is that to fulfill this dead donor rule, we had to actually make sure that we knew when death was permanent. There were stories out there where people came back to life. That's what we were worried about. Did this actually happen? And how are we going to answer that? Especially when it related to organ donation, because of that dead donor rule. So the only way to do that is actually through observation, through science. How were we going to do this? Well, we had to watch people die. We were told this was never going to happen. And I believed it for a while. But we persevered, said that we needed to answer this question to gain trust in the system. And so we went to the intensive care units. And we asked families to participate in a study where normally, in the dying process, we take all the monitors off. They're electrocardiogram monitors that watch the heart rate. They're blood pressure monitors that go into the wrist, into the blood vessel. They're oxygen monitors that go on the fingertips. Usually we take these all away and leave a family to grieve with their dying loved one. This time we said we're going to put them all on and we're going to watch people die during the dying process, after their determined death, and after, to actually see if circulation restarted. Pretty morbid. I think we were surprised that almost all the families, over 600 of them that we asked, all said yes. Almost all of them said yes. And we collected the data. So I want to show you what we found. Now before we do that, we're going to show some tracings of a real person. And so I'd like to acknowledge the bravery of the patients and the families who consented to this data. It's anonymized. I also want you to feel your own pulse. Now, if that grosses you out, don't do it. No one should faint here. But feel your own pulse. It'll be on your thumb side, and you use your 2 fingers. Yeah, you can use your neck too, okay? What I'm going to show you is 2 lines. A red one, which will be your pulse, and a green one, which will also be your electrocardiogram from your heart. That's your heartbeat. So the top one is moving along, and each spike is what you're feeling in your wrist. It's called your pulse. And in fact, we use that to determine death. When that stops, someone's dying. And there you go, it's gone flatline. It's flat. All right? Yours is still beating, I'd hope. Both the electrocardiogram and the pulse is gone. And so we watch them. We watch these individuals for up to 30 minutes. And what we were surprised is this happened. The pulse came back. The pulse came back in almost 1 of 8 patients out of the 650 that we watched. Now, maybe we weren't so surprised because we'd heard these stories. There were case reports of people being determined death and then the pulse coming back. There were a few of them, but this was the first time that we prospectively, we watched them going forward for this specific purpose. This is just in a loop now. So what we found is that actually the natural history of dying, of circulation stopping, is that it stops and restarts. Nobody came back to life. They were all dead. No one started breathing. No one gained consciousness. But what happened was there was a start and stop. This was very new information for us in the medical community to confirm. What it allowed us is to say, this is how we're going to determine death in the context of organ donation, to build trust. So we didn't see any gaps more than 4 and 4.5 minutes. And they didn't last for very long. This one here lasted for about a minute before permanently stopping. So this 5-minute number now is in all our protocols for deceased donation. That once someone consents to donation, withdrawal of life-sustaining therapies, we allow that patient to die. We wait a full 5 minutes where that line is flat, and we observe them continuously before organs are recovered. So why did I ask that question, when is dead really dead? Is to build trust. We have a huge team, over 20 centers, number of researchers, 3 countries, and we're hoping together we can build trust. Why am I telling you this story? Well, I'm hoping that I can inspire you to be curious, to ask questions that you don't think can be answered for your own reasons. And I'll also say, have a conversation about organ donation. It's not for everybody, but I think it's worth the conversation because we can save lives through transplant. Thank you for your time.